Would you ever sacrifice your home, wealth, and freedom? Would you risk these things for another person's freedom that you don't even know? The Barnes home is where many of these risks were taken. There's an amazing story behind this historic site on Syracuse's north side. George Barnes was born in Kent, England in 1827. He came to Syracuse, New York in 1844. He was a major player in two lucrative professions, law and the local railroad.
Prior to that, in 1849, he married the Wilkinson's niece, Rebecca Hermans, now known as Rebecca Barnes. In 1853, they built their Italianate villa on James Street Hill. The address today is 930 James Street. It's a mansion. Samuel May performed their wedding ceremony. They built their mansion near the homes of their close friends, the Cedrics and the Wilkinsons. The trio families formed a group of Underground Railroad supporters. They served as members of the 13th Person Vigilance Committee appointed for Syracuse on October 4, 1850.
The committee joined together in opposition to the fugitive slave law. Furthermore, the Barnes home was a station for fugitive slaves to have food, shelter, clothing, hiding spots, and a way to get transportation to freedom. Which is a law that says if you were caught with a fugitive slave, you could have been put in jail and enslaved back to slavery. In addition, the Barnes were abolitionists, which is a person who fought to end slavery.
In fact, George Barnes contributed bail money for those indicted as the result of the Jerry rescue. He signed a bail of $2,000 each for a group of 3 white men. Also, he signed a bail of $4,000 for William Thomas, an African-American teacher. The Barnes sacrificed a lot for freedom. What do you have in this time of slavery? They were willing to help runaway slaves because they didn't believe slavery was just. George and Rebecca Barnes sacrificed their 3-story high house, wealth, jobs, goods, and freedom just for a stranger freedom.
The Barnes really hated slavery. They also had the resources to help. Moreover, the question still occurs, why do people lead while others follow? Some people are born leaders. They also have the natural potential to be a leader, such as the Barnes, Sedgwicks, and the Wilkinsons. George Barnes used his business connections to assist in his abolitionist work. How? Well, he owned a lumber and railroad company. While he was shipping lumber to Canada, he was also able to ship fugitive slaves along.
Knowing that he can get caught and put in prison must have been stressful because of the fugitive slave law.
The issue of slavery caused a big controversy, such as pro-slavery versus anti-slavery. Pro-slavery versus anti-slavery was a big thing in the time of slavery. Pro-slavery was a group of people who thought slavery was right. Anti-slavery was a group of people who went against slavery. On the anti-slavery side, some people were well known. One of those people was Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a slave and had escaped. After she had escaped, Tubman repeatedly returned to the South to rescue slaves.
Harriet guided 300 slaves into freedom by following the drinking gourd and the North Star. She and the slaves went through horrible weather. For example, hail, rain, snow, and muggy weather. On one occasion, a slave was tired of walking and not eating every day. The slave wanted to go back to his plantation. Miss Tubman wouldn't let the slave go back, so she pulled a gun on him and said, "You are going to die or come." The reason why Harriet Tubman wouldn't let the slave go back because if the slave went back to his master, he would probably have been whipped until he confessed who took him and the others from the plantation. Where are they at now?
There are many similarities between Harriet Tubman and George Barnes. Some similarities are that they were against slavery and they were abolitionists. In comparison, they both wanted to help fugitive slaves get to freedom. They liked the help. They were considered as caregivers. One good quote that's not as famous as other quotes is, "A good idea with effort is better than just a good idea." So if Martin Luther King Jr. or Harriet Tubman didn't act upon their ideas, they wouldn't have been as famous as they are now.
So if the Barnes and the other abolitionists did not act up on their idea, they wouldn't have been so famous. The Barnes are different than other abolitionists because they wanted to keep their work low-key. Now, since I told you about my historical site / family, would you have been a leader like George Barnes during that time of slavery?
The Barnes had courage to risk their home for the freedom of strangers. Do you have the courage to sacrifice your home?